Everybody, welcome back to the Surface Interval, another top 5 shipwreck video, okay? I guarantee the Thistlegorm is going to be in this one, but everybody loves a good shipwreck. There are quite a few shipwrecks around there, down under the waves, but we've dropped an awful lot of things over the water over the years, and we've sunk some ships on purpose as well, either by literally blowing them up in wars or by taking some time to, clean them and then sink them somewhere properly. But shipwrecks are just awesome because the reef ends up growing on them, so you get the best of both worlds. You can experience the wildlife and a bit of history at the same time. But here are 5 of my favourite shipwrecks right now. The Thistlegorm is on most divers' bucket lists and top 5 list. It ticks a lot of the boxes. It's mostly upright. It's in a pretty decent condition for now. It's fairly shallow as well. It's in recreational limits. There's plenty to see on the inside and the outside. It's a great all-rounder of a shipwreck, and it's in the Red Sea, so it's fairly temperate, nice warm waters. It has plenty of history as well. Because it was sunk in the Second World War, it still has most of its cargo in place, and there's enough space for us to kind of swim through and take a good look around on the inside around the cargo as well. Thistlegorm was transporting all sorts for the war efforts, from motorbikes and cars and trucks and to sort of bombs and stuff. There's even a conspiracy theory, like everything else today online, because they were transporting welly boots. Why would they be sending welly boots to the desert? So a lot of people think that's some kind of conspiracy theory, but they're just welly boots. The downside to Thistlegorm being on everybody's top 10 list is that it's very, very popular. It's quite hard to get a quiet dive on Thistlegorm, especially during daylight hours and like mid-afternoon. Especially with a lot of open circuit diving, there's going to be a lot of bubbles finding their way up through the shipwreck, so it feels like you're diving in lemonade. There can also be some wicked current at times that you really do need to pay attention to, and because there's lots of diving, it's deteriorating a little bit faster than some others. I even think that some boat a few years back actually tied onto one of the guns and then yanked the gun off the deck. So yeah, try and go visit it before it literally gets pulled apart. A lot of dive boats end up mooring onto shipwrecks, not specifically Thistlegorm, but shipwrecks around the world. But yeah, the older ones, if you do, it just ends up wrenching stuff off. So they're starting to try and put some off-site sort of mooring points. But yeah, it is better to visit this one as soon as possible. The Cöln the Cöln in Scapa is a beautiful shipwreck, sitting around 36 meters deep down to the bottom. It's kind of listing over to one side. Most of the important structures are still in pretty good conditions, actually. When they blew it up, they blew up the engine room, so that's not in great condition, but the damage is concentrated there, so the rest of the shipwreck is very much as it was 100 years ago. It's just covered in algae and stuff, obviously. It's quite nice to navigate the passageways on a wreck when it's completely on its side. As divers, we don't really need the up-down space that you normally get in corridors, but the passages are now quite wide because it's on its side, so you now have plenty of good space for a good old frog kick. It's kind of chilly though. Scapa Flow is at the northern point of Scotland. It is fairly sheltered where it is, but the weather can easily call off a dive up there. It's not really 5mm wetsuit territory neither. Dry suits are best up here. If you've never dived a dry suit before, it's best that you get some experience with a dry suit first before booking a trip up to Scapa Flow. Fujikawa Maru is probably the most famous shipwreck in Lagoon. There are quite a lot to look at down over there, but Fujikawa is probably the best, mainly because it's a pretty large shipwreck. It's in very good condition considering its age, and there's plenty to see. She also sits in recreational limits, which is plus, so you can spend plenty of time exploring the wreck and the cargo. Inside, you'll find everything from bits and bobs of Japanese Zero fighter planes and sort of bits and things for war, along with bowls and lots of sort of natural life kind of stuff, and even an old brass telegraph machine. I think that's still down there. Fujikawa was a bit of a Frankenstein monster. It started life as just a passenger's cargo ferry, and then in the 1940s, the Imperial Japanese Navy took ownership of it, bolted a bunch of guns onto it, and then kind of shipped her off to war. Fujikawa was actually hit by a torpedo during the war. Didn't sink though, managed to limp back to the safety of Lagoon for repairs, and then after, I think it was a fair while, after she was all patched up, they kind of put her back out to sea, and then a month later she was torpedoed again, and then she sunk. Yongala is a bit of a tragedy of a shipwreck in its history because a lot of people died on board. Yongala was another passenger and cargo ferry in Australia, nothing to do with the war. In 1911, a cyclone sank her. Back in those days, warnings about cyclones were made with sort of flags from the shore and telegraph machines. Yongala didn't have a telegraph machine yet, so didn't receive any of those messages, and it seems that she didn't see the warning flags, and where most other vessels kind of took shelter, she continued on and eventually sank. Yongala is just covered in marine life. She's over 100 years old now and is mostly in recreational levels as well. I don't think you can actually go inside because the air bubbles and clumsy divers can damage her too much, so I think that's off limits, I believe, but she's still in great condition to see plenty from the outside. But the main attraction of Yongala is just the marine life. Because it's kind of solitary where it is and it's just surrounded by nothing but sand, marine life just love to hang around it for a bit of shelter and a respite, and sometimes you have to fight your way through the marine life just to sort of see anything. And it's a huge range from tiny little fish to the really big stuff as well. So it's the best of both worlds. You get to see the shipwreck and you also get to see all of this marine life. The Kittiwake was sunk on purpose. Now, a lot of these were sunk on purpose, but the Kittiwake served out her career as a submarine rescue vessel for the US Navy, I think. She actually recovered the black box from the Challenger disaster. Kittiwake also had a run-in with Greenpeace, literally when they were protesting some nuclear missile test. The Kittiwake sort of stepped in to protect the submarine that was running the test, and then Greenpeace ended up driving into her. But in 1994, Kittiwake was decommissioned. Lots and lots of paperwork later, she was finally sunk in 2011. Just off Grand Cayman in about 20 meters of water, so the perfect sort of diving depth. Kittiwake was, of course, stripped clean beforehand, make sure all the nasty stuff was taken out so it didn't affect the local environment, and they actually had sections cut out for easy access for scuba divers to get in and out safely. Whenever you're on the inside of Kittiwake, you can normally see multiple exits, so it's a very safe shipwreck. Then Nate had to go and ruin everything. Tropical storm Nate bashed Kittiwake a little bit harder than Greenpeace ever could, and she went from sitting perfectly upright to kind of over on her port side. You can still dive there, last time I checked, but yeah, everything's kind of 30 degrees to one side. It just makes it a little bit weird. Upright shipwrecks are just a cinch to navigate. 90 degrees is kind of odd at first, but you get used to it. Still pretty easy to get your head around, but 30 degrees is just a little bit odd, and it takes a minute to get your head around when you're actually inside. But because it was stripped clean, you can swim quite readily through most of the wreck to explore it, the engine room, and you can even swim straight out of one of the smokestacks. So there are 5 of my favourite shipwrecks at the moment, but there are just literally hundreds of thousands out there. There's even plenty off the south coast here, which are quite fun to explore, but of course you do run the risk of bad weather or visibility. But let me know your favourite shipwreck in the comments and any local secrets near you that others should be diving. Don't forget to check out the 2 Minute Foundation and all of the great things that they do, along with what you can do to help out your local community. And of course, check out simplyscuba.com. Thank you for watching, everybody, and of course, safe diving.